Shalom Aleichem, everyone who's here and not here. We will, with Hashem, try to finish off today Havdalah. And I know a lot of people are already away in programs and things, so hopefully be able to hear this wherever you are, whenever you can. And we'll start the summer with Hashem. Okay, so Reish Tzadi Ches, Baruch Ala Neir, Barim Raya Eish, and Yeshloi. If you have it, you don't have to run after it, says the Shulchan Aruch. So see from here that the Bremer Eish is not a choiva like the rest of Havdalah, which is similar to what he said before about Besamim, that like Besamim with Iker was not a choiva of Havdalah Be'etzim, it was because of the Vaya al Avdon Nefesh, I mean, Shem Yasera, so you feel bad, so you have it. So here also, it is as a zecher for the Brias Eish on Motzei Shabbos, and therefore it's like a zecher study. It's not really a part of the Etzem Havdalah. So with Sadecha, it's interesting that they made it part of Havdalah. It's how you say Brei Paragrafen, and then you're going to say Bremer Eish in the middle, and it's not considered a hefsek because it's a chelik of Havdalah. And the Gemara says that we'll see later on. They're supposed to hold the coast the whole time. The Mishnah says, and he brings a raya from the Gemara that says Soder ala kois. Misada, the whole thing ala kois. We see that the whole thing is really Misadecha, they're misakin it as a chelik of the whole, as a unit of Havdalah, so it's not considered a hefsek between the Brei Paragrafen and the rest of Havdalah. It's not like a totally side thing. On the other hand, it's side enough that it's not a chova, it's a chov b'fnei asma of the zecher of what happened. So there's going to be enough communities in this, as we see as we go along, of the dargas achiyuv that it is over here. Now, even though it's not a chova, still the Mishnah Berurah brings down that you're not allowed to light from it a ner shel hedyot. Like I can't take, let's say I light the Havdalah candle, and then before I make Havdalah, I'm going to light another candle for the house or whatever. I can't do that because it's considered a ner shel mitzvah, and from a ner shel mitzvah, I can't light a ner shel hedyot. Mishnah Berurah, though it does say in Hilchos in Kuf Nun Daled, in Hilchos Basic Knesses, when it talks over there about ner Basic Knesses, it says by ner Havdalah that once you made the bracha on the ner Havdalah, once you made the Bremer Eish, then it's considered what's called nasa mitzvaso. We say by mitzvahs b'chlal that once it's nasa mitzvaso, anything that's only the mitzvah, once it's nases, then it's paka from it the kedusha, and you're allowed to do what you want to with it. So once you make the Bremer Eish on it, then that's considered it's fulfilled its mitzvah. It's nasa mitzvaso, and from that point on, you could light something else from it. Now the Mishnah Berurah, the Shulchan Aruch says, "Anim yili b'motzei Shabbos and Motzei Yom Kippur yesh omrim shemachzir achrav." Even though you don't have to be choser after it to look after if you don't have a ner on Motzei Shabbos, but on Yom Kippur you do. So because Yom Kippur, the Mishnah Berurah explains, is that that is a chiyuv. That in other words, the chiluk is that on Motzei Shabbos, the reason we light the ner is because a zecher of Brias Eish. On Yom Kippur, we light it and we did Havdalah to show that we're mavdil between the Isra Malacha of Yom Kippur and the of Hadlakas and Yom Kippur to Motzei Shabbos. So it's Midin Havdalah, it's Mamish Me'ikar Din, it's not just a zecher because there is no Brias Eish on Motzei Yom Kippur. So the shala is that why, if it's a Havdalah that you couldn't light ner, light or during Yom Kippur, and now you can. So why is that different than any other Shabbos? Every Shabbos also, it should be Havdalah between Hadlakas and Eish that you couldn't do on Shabbos, and now you can. So the Mishnah Berurah in Hilchos Yom Kippur, so he speaks out over there that the reason you need Havdalah on Yom Kippur more than Mitzad Hadlakas Eish more than Shabbos, there he doesn't speak about Shabbos, but it just goes to explain that it's a chiyuv Havdalah to show that Yom Kippur, even though it's a Yom Tov, it's not Shabbos, it's a Yom Tov, and it's different from every other Yom Tov. Minus Yom Kippur from every other Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov you're allowed to light Eish, and Yom Kippur you're not allowed to light Eish. So you need to show a Havdalah between Yom Kippur and other Yom Tovim. Shabbos is Pasha. We know you can't light Eish on Yom Tov. I don't need to make a Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos to remind me I can't light an Eish on Shabbos. We know that. That's a double Pasha. I never had a Havim and I could. But since on Yom Kippur, since the Taurus Yom Tov, I might have thought that it's like other Yom Tovim, and I could make a Havdalah on it. I could light an Eish on Yom Tov. So Kamash Malan Yom Kippur is different, and therefore I need to do a Havdalah for that. So that's why it's Mechovas Havdalah. So that's why it's different than Motzei Shabbos, that it's only within Zeicher. And that's part of the reason why you need on Yom Kippur in Ner Sheshavas. You can't light something new. You need to have a Ner that was lit Erev Yom Kippur, and it was Shavas. It wasn't used the whole Yom Kippur. And now you use it to show that it was something that could be Kayam, but it couldn't be Nidlak, on Yom Kippur itself. So that's Menachos Yom Kippur. Now the Shamru and Sifkat and Dala brings down in the name of Rabbi Kiveger that if it comes out that you need to, let's say, learn Motzei Shabbos, you didn't get a chance to do Havdalah yet, and you want to sit and learn before Havdalah, so you're allowed to learn next to a Ner without making a Breimer Eish. You don't have to wait around for it. And so the Shar Tzion over here has a suffix about it based on the Lashon of a Kolbo, but he says that the Minig Olam is like a Rukveger, like I said to begin with, the Minig is because you see that the Minig is to say V'yiten Lecha and Motzei Shabbos by or Haner that they light in the shul in order to be able to read to say V'yiten Lecha, even though they didn't make Havdalah yet till after V'yiten Lecha. What about how could there be Neneh from the Eish without making a bracha on it? So you see from here that B'chalal, the bracha Breimer Eish for Havdalah is not a bracha Nenin. It's not to be matir like other bracha Nenin. It can't be Neneh from Olam Hazeh without a bracha. So I can't be Neneh from the Eish without a bracha. That's not the pshat, because I'm Neneh from Eish every day without a bracha. So it's no different than Motzei Shabbos. It's just that Motzei Shabbos it's a bracha Shevach V'Haidah to be Meshabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the Brias Eish that happened on Motzei Shabbos. So since only bracha Shevach V'Haidah, there's no Isra Hana without making a bracha first. That's what comes out from this Rabbi Kiveger. And Sif Beis, he says mitzvah mufkar levar alavuka, to make it on a torch. The minimum shot in a torch of the avuka is 2 neras. So Shlomo Zalman says that, and lines what we just said before, it's brought from Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos, that on Motzei Yom Kippur you don't need an avuka. All you need is one eish, one wick. So why? Because the reason we need ribui or is on Motzei Shabbos is zecher the eish. There was nidlak, and there's kama oros, kama gavanim within the eish. So like Rashi says in brachos, that's why we make a bracha very morei eish in plural. We make a lashon in plural because they're different gavanim, different colors that are within the eish on Motzei Shabbos. So we make morei eish. We have to have more than one, which shows the ribui or Mashenkin on Motzei Yom Kippur, like we just said before, that it's we didn't have Havdalah to show that you couldn't light it during Yom Kippur. It's enough to show that Havdalah with only one ner. But even so, Shlomo Zalman says that the nusach habracha should be on Motzei Yom Kippur also ma'orei eish, even though it's plural. Even you can make it on one, because it's still plural, because that's to stay in line with the nusach that we always say every Motzei Shabbos. We're not going to make a new nusach for Yom Kippur, Motzei Yom Kippur. If on Motzei Shabbos that's also Yom Tov, and all you have is one ner, let's say lit, then Rosh Hashanah says you're allowed to light another ner to make the nevuka, to put it next to each other to make a nevuka, and it's not considered lo l'tzorach Yom Tov, because the tzorach mitzvah alone would not be the tzorach Yom Tov, because he says like every Shabbos, the ribui or is what's marbe the simcha for Shabbos and for Yom Tov. So now it's Yom Tov, have ribui or having another ner lit, that's also l'chavod Yom Tov. Just a general shaila, when you do yak nahaz, like we do on Motzei Shabbos, that's Yom Tov. So there's a shaila. Generally speaking, the Mishnah Berurah says here that you're supposed to be in then of Sifkat and Ches. Yagiu ha'amoros la'adadi. You should make sure that the two, to make Gemara Eish, you should touch the 2 wicks together to combine them to be one Eish. But when it comes to yak nahaz, when it's Motzei Yom Tov, Motzei Shabbos, it's Yom Tov. So that I heard from Shlomo Zalman, and I think it's written in his name as well, that you should not take the 2 candles and touch them together. So what he explained was that when you touch, if you tip them, it's going to cause the wax to drip. and that's going to be so it'll be less wax to light. So it's gram kibui. So it's the shala of an issue of gram kibui. Well, the Yashiv held that you do put it together. They weren't kosher for that, but it's a shittus a rush that gram kibui is also in Yom Tov. So because of that chash iser, then that overrides the general minhag to touch the two nearest together. We're going to be nichnas into a suffix iser. So that's what I do whenever we have yaknahaz. I just tick it. He said it's enough to put them close together, then that's considered marei eish. They don't actually touch them together. So that's my minhag based on what I heard from Shlomo Zalman. It is Baruch Shem El Yoshev also that you could light another, or he says it's better to light another candle than to light two matches on yaknahaz, because the matches have mamash no tzorach Yom Tov at all. They're going to go out in a few seconds. There's no toilets for Yom Tov, so it's better to light another nair than it is to light two matches just to make the bracha meir eish when it's yaknahaz for Yom Tov. It's not a real tzorach laka, but it's not really tzorach Yom Tov, so it's an issue. Better to light another nair and then put them close together than it is to light just matches, even from an existing flame. Now, to make a bracha on electric for Motzei Shabbos, so Rashi Pesach Frank brings down in Har Tzvi that the Tzafnas Baneach, the Ragod Shover, and Reb Chaim Ozer both made Havdalah on a electric light. So Meidach, Reb Shlomo Zalman Tainas that we have later on in Sif Tesvav, an or panas, if you have a light that's in a glass, is a problem of what the Gemara says, you can't have or bashashis, or behind the glass. You're supposed to see the actual or. So whenever you light an electric light, so then you have an issue of or panas. So they held that it's a problem to do it. So Nissim Karelet said that maybe Reb Chaim Ozer, it is machlokas later on, as we saw in Sif Tesvav, the Bir Alacha by Richos over there. The name of the Rashba is Matir, or in Ashashis, and many are cholach on him in the Beis Yosef, and they have a Tamiyah on him from the Gemara of Panas. But there's a Shitas Rashba this Matir, and perhaps the Rashba holds it's only a problem when you can't see the light, or clearly. But when it's in a clear glass, then there's no problem according to the Rashba. So Nissim Tained that maybe during the time of Chaim Ozer, as Yadua, Chaim Ozer had to write letters and everything to against those who thought that electricity is not considered fire. Shalom. For those who are, I'm in the Chabura Beis Medrash of Rabbi Eisenberger in Borough Park. It's a beautiful, beautiful situation over here. So Chaim Ozer, I'm recording this here. Okay, so Chaim Ozer had a whole milchama to prove that electricity, that electric light is considered fire. In his days, the kind of electric lights they had are considered fire, considered eish midaraisa, and it's also to light them on Shabbos. There were those in Montana who are allowed to light them on Shabbos. So part of his milchama was to show that it's really eish. So Nissim Taina that maybe Chaim Ozer and the Ragod Shover dafka lit on Motzei Shabbos with electricity, and to be samach on the Shitas Rashba that it's allowed. There's not a problem of or bashashis, in order to prove to the world that it's considered eish. He was trying to make a point at that time, but now that it's already clear that everybody knows that it's eish, nobody would have the chutzpah to light electric lights on Shabbos anymore. It was already nikva like a Chaim Ozer. So then now we go back to machmer like the Beis Yosef that or bashashis is a problem. However, Shmuel first says in the name of Moshe that it's no problem at all to make Motzei Shabbos, and as long as you can see it and it's the kind of electricity that has a filament, not you can't make it on other types of bulbs that don't have a filament. One that has an actual filament, which is really eish, that Rav Moshe held you're allowed to do it. So the shayla is, what does Rav Moshe do with Rav Shlomo Zalman's taina of Ner Bashashis? Why is that not a problem? So I wanted to say that maybe the pshat in Ner Bashashis, maybe the chisaron is that you have to see the actual Aish and not behind a glass, that's when the Aish exists on its own right. And now you're just putting it behind a glass. If you have a nair and you put it into some kind of a lamp or something like that. So that's an issue. That could be an issue. Masha'enkin, by an electric light, that the whole tsura of its adlaka is dafka in this bulb. That's the way it's made. You can't light it by itself. There's no way to light it by itself. It'll burn itself up right away. It won't even work. So perhaps it's chativa achas. Perhaps it's one unit, that the bulb and the filament are a unit. It's not a filament as a thing on its own, but that's the way that this filament lights, is dafka in this bulb. So maybe that is the ofen of Aish, and that's why Rav Moshe held that it's okay. It's not a kasha from Ner Bashashis. So I told this over to Rav Shmuel first. I timed this to him to answer Rav Moshe's psak. So he wanted to say that if that's true, then how come Rav Shmuel Zalman didn't say that? But he wanted to say that Rav Moshe held that Ner Bashashis is because you don't really see the gufa or, you just see the glass. So you used to have like darkened glass. It wasn't so clear, or was white, whatever. You couldn't see the actual ore behind it. Mashenkin, our glass today, which is totally clear, you could. That's not a problem. That's what he wanted to say. But the news daiti, if you look in the Bir Halacha over in the Siftas Vav, in the end of the Simon, the mahokes of the Rashba and the Beis Yosef is that seems to be it's when it's in a case where it really is pure glass, clear glass. And even though you could see it well, it's still a machlokas. And it's stuck a raya from the fact that the poskim don based on the Rashba, whether it's not a problem to see it with glasses, to be wearing glasses when you're making the bracha. Is that an issue or not, wearing glasses? So if we're only talking about a case where you can't see, so it's white or you can't see through it clearly, what's the shaila of glasses? There's no shaila at all. The fact that there is a dion at all about glasses, it's mashma like we're saying that let's say I'll just bring Nacharaya. Nissim Karelis wants to say that the shaila of glasses is not an issue. It's different than Ner Bashashis because the glasses are bottled to your face. They're bottled to your eyes. So it's not considered like you're seeing your eye, seeing it through something else. That is your eye. Your eyes are a unit of your eyes and your glasses. So Huadin, you could say same as Sphora, that in the bulb, the glass of the bulb is bottled to the filament and as one unit of the light, and therefore it's not a shaila of nearby shashas like I was saying before. So that could be a shot. Okay. Now, if it was in Sif Hay, we have a halacha that has to be a nair that was Shabbos on Shabbos. It wasn't nidlak b'isra on Shabbos to make a bracha on Motzei Shabbos. Mr. Brewer says that if it was lit b'isra on Shabbos, even b'diavad, you're not, you would say Maria Aish for Havdalah, even b'diavad. So the Bir Halacha says a fascinating thing, according to McVeger, that according to that, if you would have made that bracha Maria Aish in the middle of Havdalah on Aish that was lo Shabbos, that was lit b'isra, then you would have to go back and make a new Brei Pri Hagafen before you drink it, because it becomes a hefsek between Brei Pri Hagafen and Havdalah, because you had no heter to make it. You weren't say anything with it. Sif tes b'cholin habaros al ken al kolkach she'ilu machlis kisim b'neiim hu nidlak varchim aleihem we should assume lahar. If you have coals that were lit for the sake of or, and now they died down, if they're bright enough that you could light a match from it, you can still make a bracha on it. So now, Rosh Zalman, Shiur Shabbos is based on this. If you have a gas stove lit from before Shabbos, and it goes through the whole Shabbos, or if you lit a gas stove for the sake of cooking something, then you could not make a bracha of Maria Aish on it because it was lit for the sake of cooking. It has to be lit lahoyer. It has to be for the sake of or. It has to be lahoyer. So Shlomo Zalman has a suffix based on this, that if you would light a stove even for the sake of the sake of Havdalah, would that work? Is that pasha that would work or not? Because a stove is not something which is lahoyer. A stove is something which is always for cooking. So he brings a raya though. He brings a raya from a Havdalah candle. Havdalah candle. Nobody lights a Havdalah candle, especially the special Havdalah candles. Nobody lights that to light up anything. It's all for the sake of the covet of Havdalah. So it has to be l'ha'ir. So you see that something you lit for the sake of Havdalah, that's called l'ha'ir. When you do l'chavet Havdalah, that has a din of l'ha'ir. So who a din, you could say that also if you lit a stove for the sake of Havdalah, that also would work. That's how he's more noted to say that the shem kach, the pashtus, it would work. So if you're stuck somewhere and all you have is a gas stove and you don't have anything else to light, then b'diavad you could use that for Havdalah, to light your gas stove for Havdalah.
Yeah.
I think you can bring a raya to this also from the Mishnah Brura in the Sifkat and Chavtes, that he says by near basic knesses that it's a suffix whether you can make a bracha on it. It depends if it's Adam Chashuv or not Adam Chashuv. There's a whole suffix about it. But if everyone agrees, if you lit it for the sake of Havdalah, for sure you could make a bracha on it, even though its stam is that it's for Adam Chashuv, it's not for the sake of or. So we see that even the thing that's stama, not lahir, if you light it the shem Havdalah, we see that it works. That's a good raya. Okay.
Night parts doesn't work. Two person.
Okay, in Sifir Aleph, this din of near basic knesses, if there's an Adam Chashuv, you make a bracha on it. If not, then you don't make a bracha on it. Then some say for carrot, say the opposite. Birlacha says that first of all, this is a machlok shoshanim whether you make a bracha on it or not. So he has Birlacha has a shaila. For sure, if you lit it the shem Havdalah, it works. What if you lit it the shem covered, and at the end you end up using it for or, like you read by it. So now it became laha'ir. The hadlaka was the shem covered, but now the sofa you use it laha'ir. Use it for reading or for counting money or something like that. So it's used laha'ir. Could you now make a bracha on it? So he said the Maisa he takes on that it's not a din in hadlaka. You still able to hear me with Derek? Can you still hear me okay? Because there's other talking. Yeah.
I can hear you. It feels more like a base measures.
Okay, good. All right. Good. It actually is one. So. Okay. Okay, so the Hachra L'Maisa, the Bir Lacha, is that this Nereshel Havdalah is what's Kaveh is not. There's no din hadlaka. There's no din Maisa hadlaka to be Kaveh what it is or not. It depends just what it is. So even though hadlaka might have been for one thing, if Lamai said is laha'ir because you use it laha'ir, then that's sufficient. That's enough to make it. You can use it for Havdalah as well. Okay, skipping ahead to Sifya Dalid. People were sitting in the base medrash and they brought an or. One should make a bracha for all of them, says. So the Mishnah Brura says here, interesting enough, the name of the Birchei Yosef from the Shara Tshuva, that someone's already Yotzei, somebody already made Havdalah in Shul, whatever. They made Tzol Havdalah, they're Yotzei everything, and now you're being Motzi someone else. You could also be Motzi in the bracha of Eish. You could be Av B'Shiyatza Motzi, Midin Arvus, like any other brachas and mitzvahs. The shala is, he said previously, we saw in Reish Sadik Zion that he paskin that berachas, the bracha of the reach, berachas of reach could not be made if you already reyotze it. So why is this different? Because that's not a chayva and this is not a chayva. Both of these brachas, berachas of reach and berachas eish, are not a real chayva because they could be made outside of Havdalah. And they're like we said before, they're not really midin Havdalah. They're other things like the neshama going out and the neshama yisera going out or the zecher leish. But so you have to say from here that you see from here that even though they're both not mamish chovos Havdalah, but he's holding that birchas hareach is birchas hanenin. And birchas hanenin, if I'm not being yotzei for myself, I can't be motzi somebody else. But birchas eish is the Birch Shevach V'Hodah on the Brias Eish. And so the Birch Shevach V'Hodah, once they made it a chelik of Havdalah mitzad the Mihilchos Havdalah to be soder at all coast, then I can make this Birch Shevach V'Hodah for somebody else, even though I'm already outside. It's not my person. And the Chazon Ish is cholik. Chazon Ish holds that there's no arvus for this bracha, and it can't be motzi someone else. But so you have to say that the machlokas, the Chazon Ish and Chazon Ish and the Bir Halacha and the Smicha Brew, is whether or not it's a Birch Zanenin or a Birch Shevach V'Hodah. But the Mishnah Brew is pasking that it is Shevach V'Hodah, and I could be motzi, even though I'm yotze myself already from before. Okay, Sif Tezvav, we already spoke out before, the main nakudas of the whether Bashashis and behind the glass. Moving on to Simon Reish Tzadi test. So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Asur lechol shum davar ofilu lishtos yayin or shar mashkin utzemayim." You can't eat anything or drink anything besides water. Drink anything besides water. Mishatechshach from nightfall, which the Mishnah Berurah brings down from the poskim. That means even from Safek Hashecha, not only nightfall but also Safek Hashecha. I already can't make it. I can't start eating something or drinking something besides water on Motzei Shabbos. That is over here. Okay. Unless if you're Yoshev Ocha, you're middle of Shal Shudas already, and you're sitting and eating Shal Shudas, and it became dark, you don't have to stop. You can keep on eating until you're done with Shal Shudas, and only at that point you have to make Havdalah. So now, this Isra Achila Motzei Shabbos before Havdalah, so like we said, the Mishnah Berurah says the Magen Avraham, that's even Safek Hashecha. So the shaila is what happens if you didn't start Shal Shudas yet. Now you got to, it's Ben Ishmashas, or it's getting to Shkia, or Pashkia, Safek Hashecha, you didn't have Shal Shudas yet. So that the Mishnah Berurah says that if you didn't eat Shal Shudas yet, then you're allowed to start it even after Shkia. Or even something else, not Shal Shudas. If you already had Shal Shudas, but you're still hungry, you want to eat something, you can also grab something after Shkia. He says, until Chatzi Shah couldn't say Tzorka Chavim, Mishnah Berurah says, until a half hour before it says. So the Ksosar Shulchan says that's that half hour before it says that works. That's only the Das Shulchan Aruch. Mishnah Berurah is talking the Das Shulchan Aruch himself, the Pasuk Lekar Ben Tam, that it's not considered Shkia. It's not considered Shkia till, or it's not considered nightfall till 72 minutes after Shkia. So then you have still a half hour before that. You have quite a bit of time before a half hour before 72 minutes. You have 42 minutes. You can still go ahead and eat, and that would only be according to the Shulchan Aruch. But according to us, he says in Eretz Yisrael, the Ksosar Shulchan was in Yerushalayim. He says by us in Eretz Yisrael that Mikra Din, they pass them like the Goyinim. So immediately after Shkia begins the Safek. And also, Rabbi Yasher says, the Mishnah Berurah is talking about in his place, there's a big difference between Shkia and Seisuk Chavim, but in Yerushalayim, like the Shita Zagra, based on the Goyinim, is 18 minutes after Shkia is already Seisuk Chavim. So, and the Yerushalmis would rely on that, even the Kula sometimes, to start doing Malacha after that period of time, or at least a little bit after that. So the Zman is going to be different, and it's I know Dallas is similar to Yerushalayim. We're on the same kav as Yerushalayim and Dallas. So the time, the hefsek between Shkia and Seitz is much shorter. I would say that's why Dallas is the only other place in the world that has 972 area code. So we're the direct line to Eretz Yisrael. Haraya, I'll bring a raya to that. Before I left Eretz Yisrael to go to Dallas for the first time, so a Magen Shiur from Kol Torah Yeshiva, Rosham Zalman Yeshiva, approached me. He told me, he said, "I heard you're going to Texas. You might want to hear this. That there's a well-known statement of Reb Chaim Volozhiner. That Reb Chaim Volozhiner said that Torah has a lot of stanzas, a lot of stops along the way through the whole Gullus till Mashiach comes. And he said the last stop for Torah before Mashiach is going to be America." That's the Reb Chaim Volozhiner was known to have said. Now keep in mind that Reb Chaim Volozhiner said that somewhere around the time of the Boston Tea Party, it was way before there was the United States of America. Right. It was we were still a British colony when he said that. So that was the nevuah of Havdalah. He said. So this Maggid Shiur told me that he heard from Rav Shach Zatzal that when Havdalah said the last stop for Torah is America, he said New York. He didn't mean Torah is going to get to New York. He said it meant America, real America, like the Texas, like Texas. I was shocked that Rav Shach even knew there was a Texas, but I guess and these people knew a lot more than we thought. But so he said, Rav Shach said the last stop will be like Texas. So I said, oh, good to know. Okay, 972 area code. Okay. All right. Now the Mishnah Berurah was Mekel for a number of reasons why you could start Shalosh Shidduchos even after Shkia. In the Bir Lacha brings a number of Sharat Zion brings a number of reasons. The Shittas of Balamor that the Isser doesn't really begin yet until it says Chavim, and he also brings. He says that that's the minig. He's mitzaref also that Das Reb Yossi, as we know, it's a machlokas Reb Yehuda Reb Yossi. When is Ben Ishmashas? Was Ben Ishmashas a long period of time? And like according to Reb Yehuda, Reb Yossi holds that it's only kehera fine. It's like the blink of an eye. We're not exactly sure when that is, but it's somewhere right before Tzeitzei Kohavim, which means that up until that time, after what we call Shkia, even Halacha L'Maisa, immediately after Shkia is for sure Vada Yom according to Reb Yossi. The shal is how do we paskin? So I heard once from Rabbi Yashiv, I was discussing with him davening Mincha after Shkia, and he told me that he holds that the Shittas of Mishnah Berurah is the paskin Ikar Din like Rabbi Yossi. Even the Chatchila. Now the shal is, if you look at Lashana, says it really the Chatchila, but he's certainly Ikar Din is paskin like Rabbi Yossi, which means that right after Shkia is certainly not nighttime yet. It's certainly not. We don't really consider according to Rabbi Yossi Ikar Din Safek Hashecha yet. So, because we still have a while till Ben Ishmashas, which is only the blink of an eye before it says Kohavim. Even if it says Kohavim is going to be 18 minutes afterwards, in the most, according to the Gra in Yerushalayim, so still you have a while after Shkia to be considered a day to start Mincha, he said. So that you can still daven, if you didn't daven Mincha yet, you can still daven after Shkia for that reason. As I heard from Rabbi Yashiv. Rav Moshe also has a tshuva about if somebody missed Shkia, a woman to do Hefsek Tara, because you still do it after Shkia. So Rav Moshe makes a cheshbon that you can still do it in New York till 9 minutes after Shkia. Based on the Kama Cheshbonis, but including that was the cheshbon of Rabbi Yossi. In Dallas, I say 7 minutes because New York is a little bit. It's a little bit later, a little more time expansion. So I make it till 7 minutes in Dallas. But yeah, but if a woman didn't do Hefsek Tara, she did it after Shkia. Al Kopanim, we have all these swords over here. So this is these are part of the reasons why the Bir Lacha is being makel to start Shal Shudus after Shkia. He has another swara, interesting swara that the mitzvah drabanan of Shal Shudus should be docha the isur drabanan of Achila Kodem Havdalah. It's like sort of like asay derabanan is docha los asay derabanan. The asay of eating shal shidduch should be docha the isser of eating eating food before Havdalah. Okay. Now the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat Aleph at the end says that if you already in the middle of shal shidduch, if you got up to daven, then it's usher to eat anymore before Havdalah. And that's what Sharat Zion brings. Even if he says, even if you're mavdil b'tefillah, let's say, okay, you're not allowed to eat before Havdalah, but when you daven, you also made Havdalah in the tefillah. So maybe that's a matir. So he says, no, since the Chazal asked her to eat before you made Havdalah ala kais, so the fact that you said Havdalah in tefillah is not matir you to continue shal shidduch. So once you daven mariv, then you have to stop shal shidduch and bench. You're not allowed to eat anything again before you say Havdalah. And Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Gimel says that if you started eating be'isr, you started eating after the time that you're not allowed to, then you have to stop eating. So Magen Avram says he quotes the Magen Avraham that that's only the Manda Amar Havdalah Deraisa, because if you hold that Havdalah is Deraisa, then in Hiskel B'Isser you have to be Mafsik. But the klal is by all these Isser, if you started B'Isser, if the Isser is only Drabanan, you might forget to daven mincha or whatever. If you started B'Isser, you're not chayav to be Mafsik, but you just have to remind yourself to make sure you daven mincha on time. So Manda Amar Drabanan, it should be okay. That's what the Magen Avraham says. Sharatzion has a kasha on this, that all the Achronim ask on this, that when you're allowed to continue if it's an Isser Rabbanan, that's if the whole Isser is just like an Isser Shikha, and Isser Achila is a side thing. Like you shouldn't forget to daven mincha. So it's not Isser Achila be'etzem, it just shouldn't eat, so you shouldn't forget mincha. Mashan Ken over here, Chazal made it midrabanan that there's an Isser Achila, Isser Te'ima. It's an Isser Achila. Every bite is an Isser b'fnei atzmai. It should be an Isser Achila, so here it should be different. But we already spoke this out in the sugya of Yakin Haz. We spoke out in the sugya in Arbi Sachim. Clear Chakira is Isra Achila Kodem Havdalah. Is it midin the Havdalah that you shouldn't forget Havdalah, or is it midin Livui Hamelech? Is it considered like your Malava the Melech, and it's a pagam in the Kavod Hamelech? You should be doing Divrei Levia to Malava him, and instead you stop and you stop and have a snack on the way. You're in the middle of Malava the Melech out of the city, and you say, "Excuse me, King," and you stop at the kiosk and have a corn dog, a quick corn dog on the way. So that's a gam in the Kavod Melech. So after that's the Tana of the Achronim on the Magen Avraham, that there's an Isser Te'ima b'fnei atzma because it's a gam in the Kavod Malchus. But the Magen Avraham holds no, that it's not midin levia. The Melech already left. Once Shabbos left, the Melech's gone already. And it's just the Zachiv of Havdalah anyway, and the reason you can't eat is not Gam in the Kavod Melech, it's just Mitzad the Havdalah. So it's like any other Isser D'Rabbanan. It's not real Isser Tima, it's just Mitzad the Havdalah. You shouldn't forget it. So Mela, the Magen Avraham holds, if you hold Havdalah D'Rabbanan, then if in Hischel B'Isser, you don't have to stop. So the Machalokes Achronim is totally on how we understood the Sugya in Arbi Sachim. Now, Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Dalid, and then on the Magen Avraham, that if you daven Mariv in the middle of Shal Shudis, like we mentioned before, then the Chiyuv Havdalah is chal on you. And the Sha'ar Tziyun brings that this whole Isser of the Magen Avraham, Eliyah Rabbah and other Achronim are mistapik in this, whether really it creates an Isser or not. But he says, Al Kopanim, it's pashut that if you just said Baruch HaMavda ben Kodesh HaChol, you had to do some malacha middle of Havdalah. I mean, Shal Shudis is going very long, and you had to do something. You had to light a match or something. You had to it's getting dark. So you said Baruch HaMavda, be able to do that. Then that's not enough of a Havdalah to make an Isser now to eat. You continue Shal Shudis until you make Havdalah. So just Baruch HaMavda alone. Tefillah, yes, but Baruch HaMavda not.
So Rebbe, in that case, is a distinction between Achila and other malachos? Say Baruch HaMavdil? I can say Baruch HaMavdil and turn on a light?
Right, yes, that's what he's saying. If you do Mavdil and turn on a light, that doesn't create an Isra Achila or Kodem Havdalah. You still could be considered in the middle of Shal Shudis. But if you daven Mariv, so then you mamish ended Shabbos. So you said Havdalah and everything on the davening. That's what the Magen Avraham says is Isser, not just by saying Baruch HaMavdil. So it's good to know. Like if you need in the middle of a convention and you have the Shal Shudis is going Geshmak, going late, but you want to, I don't know what you got to do there. You got to say Baruch HaMavdil to do something. You don't have to stop everybody from continuing the Geshmak of Shal Shudis. Keep it going. And you can eat with them. Whoever said it could eat with them as well. Continue eating. Okay, Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Hay that says that once even Savach HaShecha, you have to stop drinking. If you're in the middle of drinking wine, let's say you have a bunch of guys sitting and drinking wine, that's not enough of a kviyus chashuva to be considered to be mamshich like the Suda, like Shal Shudis would be. The Shala is, what about Nizonos? You're eating Nizonos and now you already started before. You're sitting having kashmaka cookies and now it becomes Savach HaShecha, you have to stop because of the Chiv Havdalah. So that's a Shaila. That's a Shaila Manachronim. Rishon Zalman, as some say that it's okay, that it's not a problem, but Rishon Zalman has a suffix about it. He said that the das of the Orcha Shulchan is to be machmer by Mizonos. Rishon Zalman signed that the tzad echad, it's a davar chashuv. Tzad sheni, the fact that you didn't wash, maybe that shows that your das was not to be kaveya. You could have washed and you didn't, so you're showing you're not making a kviyus at a time that people usually do make a kviyus by washing. So he remains besuffic about that. So we say that in Be'eset Tzarech, if you have a good Geshmaka Kums that's going with a chevra and a convention in a Shabbaton, you're all sitting eating donuts or whatever, eating mazonas, and so you don't want to stop it, then it's okay to keep. Then yes, I'll listen to keep going. But ideally, in a perfect case, then better to stop and make Havdalah. Okay, in Shabbat, in Sif Gimel, there's a, if you stop to make Havdalah, you're in the middle of a Suda and you drink wine already, so you stop and make Havdalah, Shalos, do you have to make, so the Shulchan Aruch says you don't have to make a Brei Pri Hagafen, and some say you do need to make. So Machlokas Rishonim, whether or not you have to make Brei Pri Hagafen in the middle of a Suda, if you drinking wine, Shalos, and then you stop and you make Havdalah, do you have to make a new Brei Pri Hagafen or not? So Mishabur says the halacha is like the first day that you don't need to make a bracha. We already spoke out in Hilchos Kiddush, the Yerushalmi, that everybody went with, that if you're in the middle of eating a Suda and then you're Makadosh for Shabbos in the middle of your Suda, and you already had wine in the Suda, the Yerushalmi says you don't have to make a Brei Pri Hagafen for Kiddush, which for Moshe proved from there that the Brei Pri Hagafen for Kiddush, the Ikar Din is really a Berchas Hanenin, it's not really a Berchas Mitzvah, so the Kiddush. So now, and sof kol sof, it is a new mitzvah. Shal is, so even though it's a mitzvah chadasha, now you're making Havdalah, you were drinking before it was a rishus. So l'chor it's a pella. Why should you have to make a bracha? We spoke out about Daled Kosas. Daled Kosas, the minig Ashkenaz at least, is for sure to make a bracha on all the Daled Kosas because each one is a mitzvah b'fnei atzma. So why should it be different over here? So Rishon Zalman said on this, it's brought from Shiur Shabbos. The Rishon Zalman answered, the Daled Kosas, it's l'tzarech mitzvah. Each one before, the first kos, I made a bracha on as brachas mitzvahs. On that kos, besides brachas and is brachas mitzvahs, the second kos is a new mitzvah, so I should have to make a bracha. Masha Enken, here, if I was drinking yain shel rishus, if I'm drinking yain shel rishus beforehand, like during Shal Shudus, so now that I'm making a new bracha, and I'm making Havdalah, the yain shel rishus does cover the Havdalah. A mitzvah wouldn't, but the rishus does. That's what he says. The Chor, it's a pele, which I would think the opposite. If a mitzvah doesn't cover another mitzvah, then why would rishus cover another mitzvah? So I think the pshat is simple. I think the pshat is that what he means is, and we spoke about this also there in the sugya, that since the Daled Kosas, each one is a mitzvah b'fnei atzma, so the das of the person when you make Brei Pri Hagafen is to cover this mitzvah and nothing more, because the purpose of the Brei Pri Hagafen is for the sake of the mitzvah. True, it's a Berchas Hanenin, but I'm making the Berchas Hanenin for that mitzvah. So my das is to end that mitzvah when I finish that mitzvah. I'm not going to keep on drinking after that. I'm done with it. So that's why one mitzvah is not going to cover the next mitzvah. Masha Enken, yain shel rishus, that I have a general kavanah to be drinking wine right now, so that then that's not, then, and it's going to cover all the wine that's coming, because that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting and drinking wine. There's no hagbala. There's no end to the kavanah of that bracha that it should dafka end when I get to the sake of a mitzvah. So the fact that Havdalah now is a mitzvah that I didn't do before, the Brei Pri Hagafen shaboy, that chelik of Brei Pri Hagafen is, even though it's for the Sarach mitzvah, but it's Me'ikr Berchas Hanenin that's covered by the previous Berchas Hanenin that I made beforehand. I think that's what Rishon Zalman meant by saying that. Sif Daled, we had over here when you're eating and it got dark, you finish your Suda and make Berchas Hamazon on the kos, and after you make Havdalah if you have only one kos. If you have two kosos, then bench on the first kos, and what's brought down in Shiur over here is you're allowed to also drink it. when you at Shal Shidduch, you bench on the coast, you drink it, and then you make Havdalah on the next coast. So now this you're allowed to drink it, even though it's after the Suda, after Shal Shidduch, and your Kodem Havdalah. Mr. Brewer says that it belongs to the Suda Kodemes. It's considered a hemshech of the Suda that I just ate. So the yain of Brechas Hamazon of the Suda belongs to the Suda. So it's not considered Shtia Kodem Havdalah any more than the Suda was considered Achila Kodem Havdalah. It's all a hemshech from before. You hischil beheter, you finish it off. So the Brei Pir Gafen, and that kos is a chelik of the previous Suda. It's not considered Achila Kodem Havdalah. So the Shabbat says that that's only going to be for someone who is makpid always to bench on a kos. So then his Suda, the das of the Suda, the das of the motzi, to begin with, it was kolel also that he's going to have a kos at the end because he always benches on a kos. But someone who doesn't, then it's not always makpid, then you're not allowed to drink that kos afterwards. So the Shulchan Aruch Harav says that it'd be like two kulas sasri adari. You're being makel to generally you're not makpid on a kos, and now you're coming to have shtia kodem Havdalah. It's a little bit of shver sorah. It's not clear to me why it's a problem, but that's what they say. That's what Mishnah Berurah says, and I think that's the makor for the minig of the yeshivas, that we bench on a kos in the yeshivas, and then they always cover the kos. Nobody drinks it until that, and you use that kos for Havdalah afterwards. So now there are those that have a minig to drink that kos Brechas Hamazon. There are places that do drink it. There's a Ben Ish Chai that says Geshmak Avort. He says that even though someone's not rugil to bench with a kos, but if they're rugil to have Shal Shudus by a kos, because Shal Shudus you have always a minion and people always bench on a kos, that's called rugil. It doesn't have to be rugil every meal as long as it's rugil for this meal. So if you're rugil to bench on a kos for Shal Shudus, that's called rugil. So it's in Nichlal and the das and the motzi and the whole student to have a kos at the end, and therefore you could drink it. So that's the das of the Ben Ish Chai. You would drink it. I'm not sure what the general minig of Sfardim is, if it's like the Ben Ish Chai or not, but this is certainly a good smach for those who do drink it afterwards. Rav Yashiv wants to say a different word. Rav Yashiv says that if you're not rugil and you don't drink it like the yeshivas do, when you do drink it at Shal Shidduch, at Havdalah, when you do drink it afterwards for Havdalah, then it's considered that shtia also goes back, be considered a shtia for the Suda as well. So your yotzei the shtia sakos for the Suda when you do the Havdalah as well. Now, halacha l'maisa of sheva brachas, if you do sheva brachas at Shal Shidduch, common shaila, major machlok is opposed to what to do about drinking the kos there. So it's what's brought down first. They bring down in the Dirshu from the Eshel Avram Bochach and from the Minchas Yitzchak as well, that for sure you have to drink it because otherwise it's only 6 brachos. If you don't make Brei Pir Gafen and drink, you can't make a Brei Pir Gafen and not drink it. And if you do drink, if you don't make a Brei Pir Gafen, then it's only 6 brachos, not 7 brachos. You need all sheva, and one of them is Brei Pir Gafen. Therefore, once you have to make the bracha, you have to also drink it. So the Mavarach should drink it. Rabbi Yoshev holds that you should only give it to the Chassan and Kala, the one the bracha you should make. But since the bracha is ikir for the Chassan and Kala, give it to them, and between the two of them, they should drink Amala Lugmav. Do you say the shtia for that kos? Since the ikir bracha is theirs. Ramosha and the tshuva, it's in Orchaim Chelik Dalid, Siman Samach Tes, Ois Aleph. So he has a bigger richas about this over there, and Ramosha writes that it's min haroi, also like Rabbi Yoshev, that only the Chassan and Kala should drink together a Malu Lugmav, and not the Mavarech. That's what he takes on. He says if the Mavarech Dafka wants to drink a little bit because he's already started the mitzvah, you don't have to stop him. You have to be mocha. But he holds the ideal thing is that, like Rabbi Yoshev, that you should make the bracha should be made and it should be drunk, but by the Chassan and Kala, and they should, between the two of them, drink Amala Lugmav. On the other hand, Rabbi Tzion Abba Shol and the Or L'Tzion, he holds that the Mavarach should make it and not the Chazan Akala. Nobody else, no Besubim and no Chazan Akala, only the Mavarach should make it because it's his chiyuv because he's making the bracha. So again, that's a Mavar if the Sfardim, if that's the minute of the Sfardim or not in that case. But that's the exact opposite of Rav Moshe and Rav Yashuv. Okay, in Sif Bav, we have a machlokas. If you didn't make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, can you continue to make Havdalah up until Tuesday? So basically, it's a machlokas whether or not there's a musag of tashlumin b'Havdalah. So this machlokas is only up until Yom HaShlishi, but what's pointed out over here, the person pointed out, is that there's no machlokas about Sunday. Everybody agrees that if you didn't make it Motzei Shabbos, you can still make it Sunday. So in the sugya, when we spoke this out, we spoke out the rush and everything that Sunday is not considered tashlumin. Sunday is still me'ikra din. Motzei Shabbos extends the whole 24 hours of Motzei Shabbos. That's not how tashlumin. It's not making up for Havdalah. That's still considered the ikar zman of Havdalah. We only had a shaila in Rishonim in the rush whether if somebody was an oinin l'mashal lo oleinu on Motzei Shabbos, so then could they still do it on Sunday or not? Some said yes. The rush said rush time not because those were the Rama Rutenberg and the rush that if even though Sunday is still Mikra Din, the Shala is b'shas chalos achiyuv, the shas Havdalah between Chodesh L'chol, which is Chal immediately Motzei Shabbos. If there's no chiyuv, then is there anything to extend until Sunday, or once you say there was no chiyuv Chal b'shas Havdalah being Chodesh L'chol, then there's nothing to be extended, or is it mischadesh on Kol Yom Rishon? But so on Motzei Yom Tov, there's no everyone. So he brings from Reb Kiveger, the Mishnah Berurah, that on Motzei Yom Tov, if you for sure don't have a extension into Yom Shlishi, because there's no like on Shabbos you have some machlokas, because one day it holds that up until Tuesday belongs to Shabbos, so Havdalah also can be made until then. Motzei Yom Tov, we don't have such an idea. So for sure, there's no 3 days of Tishlum of Motzei Yom Tov, but that Reb Kiveger says the next day there is though, because once you say that the next day is Ikar Adin on Motzei Shabbos, it's also the next day Ikar Adin on Motzei Yom Tov as well. So if you didn't make Havdalah Motzei Yom Tov at night, you can still make it during the day, according to Reb Kiveger. And Shiur brings that down. What's the time now? Oh, okay, we'll see if we can just speak out 1 or 2 more points, and we'll be finished here. In Sif Zion, we're not going to go into this. Let's just finish off with one last nakuda, I think, here, that in Sif Yud, we have a whole nother sugya going on over here. Until Sif Yud is all about the Achila V'Shtia Sudas and everything like that. Sif Yud is the Sif that speaks about Malacha. We have here a major machlokas, the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, that the Shulchan Aruch holds that no Malacha at all can be done before Havdalah, unless you say Baruch Hamad Ben Kodesh L'chol. The Ramah brings down from those, there is a Shitas Rishonim brought in the Ramah here, that Malachas, that's only by Malachas Chamuras, but Malachas Kalas, that's the Rebbeinu Yerucham, that Malachas Kalas, just to light a match or something like that, to read by, that you can do before Havdalah. So the Beis Yosef brings this Rebbeinu Yerucham is Tamea, he's a Pella. How can we be mchalak between one Malacha and the next? On Shabbos, I could say, there's only an Isser Malacha on Shabbos by Malachas Chamuras, but not Malachas Kalas. Until you made Havdalah, it's like Shabbos. So in the sugya we spoke out back in the sugya in the name of the Brisker Rav, the nekudas machlokas between the Chaber and the Ramah is how do you look at the Isser Malacha on Motzei Shabbos? Is it midin? The way the Brisker Rav uses it, is it midin kavod Shabbos? Like it's still mikvodesh or Shabbos? That just like I couldn't do Malacha on Shabbos, I can't do Malacha Motzei Shabbos until I make Havdalah. It's midin kavod Shabbos. And we spoke out then that the nusach of the Brisker Rav is kavod Shabbos. The nusach of the Mishnah Berurah Siv Katan Lama Gimel here, it's very chashuv Mishnah Berurah. He says the lashon Kevin Shelo Havdalah Dayan Chal b'miktzas kedusha Shabbos alav v'asru chazal b'melacha. Mishnah Berurah holds that it's not just a covered Shabbos, but it's the takana of Havdalah. They made it in a way that it's considered a hemshech of the kedusha of Shabbos. Shabbos is mamshech midrabanan until you make Havdalah. So, and that's for the Shulchan Aruch, that there's no chiluk between melachas chamuros and melachas kalos. Everything should be asur until you make Havdalah. Once you say that Shabbos is nimshach, you're mamshech the kedusha Shabbos. How could I be chaluk to one time melacha or not? That's the taina of the Shulchan Aruch. But the Ramah holds it's not true. The Ramah holds that once Shabbos goes out, once it's Motzei Shabbos, it's Oy Shabbos. It's not Shabbos anymore. There's a Chiyuv Havdalah. Fine, it's a Chiyuv Havdalah. The Isser Malacha is Midin Havdalah, not Midin Hemshech Shabbos. But it's similar to the Sugya of Tes and Shabbos that I can't do Malachas before davening Mincha. Once it's Mincha Tana, because I might forget to daven. And so similar to that is the Isser Malacha Kodem Havdalah, not Midin Hemshech of Shabbos, Midin Kodem Havdalah. So just like in Shabbos and Daf Tes over there, I'm allowed to turn, if I didn't daven mincha, I could turn a light on. Melachos kalos or mutter, I just can't get involved in involved melachos, because only then I'll forget to daven. Who it did over here, that's the Sfor of the Ramah. That's why I'm allowed to do melachos kalos even before I was mavdil. But in order to be machmer, I like to shoot this a Shulchan Aruch. So that's why we say that the Mishnah Berurah Paskins, if you machmer, at least to say Baruch HaMavdil Min Kodesh L'Chol, because then you go to say even according to the Das Shulchan Aruch. But the Nekudas Machlokas between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah is very geschmack. The Briskerov that Shal is the Isser Malacha, is it mitzad Hemshech Shabbos or covered Shabbos, or is it that's one side, or the other side is it within the Havdalah itself, and then there's a chiluk between Malachas Kalas and Malachas Chamuras. Okay, that sort of completes the main Nekudas of Hilchos Havdalah, Baruch Hashem. And so, Mr. Shem, we will follow the schedule that I sent out. That now is break time / Chazara time to Chazar over all the wonderful stuff we learned, Arba Pesachim and Hilchos Kiddush and Havdalah, until we have the Bechina and Mr. Shem at the end of before Elul, and then we can continue on in Mr. Shem and Elul with hopefully with Hilchos Hadlakas Neris, which is a very geschmacka thing to learn, and it will definitely bring us a new light into the coming year. Hashem.
Amen. Shkoyach, Rebbe, thank you.
Yeah, or
beautiful Shabbos from Yerushalayim.
Yeah, have a great Shabbos. I just end off that everything we learned now doesn't hold a candle to Hilchos Hadlakas Neris. That's for sure. I didn't really say that, but okay. On that note, have a gewaldige Shabbos and a wonderful summer, and Mr. Shem will be in touch.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Rebbe.
And please daven for us in Yerushalayim. Daven for us at the Kosel. For the whole program,
Will do.
for the Seaboard, the Ola and Torah in Yerushalayim.
Hey, Mommy, your turn. Oh, she's taking.
Kaltiv.